Hi, I'm Nela Dunato, and welcome to another tiny watercolor travel sketchbook tour. I will say that this is going to be the last tiny watercolor sketchbook I'll be using in a while because I kind of got fed up with them for reasons that I will explain as I go along. So, my next sketchbook is going to be twice the size. But this one, I had lots of fun with it. I've been using it since October the 14th, 2022. Now it's late December 2023, so a little over a year. We had some fun times together, and now it's time for me to move on. But before that, I'm going to share with you what I've been doing in the sketchbook and how I've been experimenting with my sketchbook practice and what I've learned. So the first sketch here, I actually did the pen drawing standing up while I was waiting for a friend at a bus stop. And it took me maybe less than 10 minutes to do the ink sketch. No pencil sketches, just, very, very uneven lines, so very wonky. But I'm trying to kind of go with that. And then I added the colors the next day based on the photo that I took. So sometimes you don't finish the drawing right then and there, and I've learned to be okay with that. Although ideally, I would like to finish the entire drawing in one sitting, but sometimes it's just not possible, especially, if you're doing it in this like stolen time. Like, for example, I'm waiting for someone or we're taking a short break while we're hiking. So that's how these events go. But this is a scene on the beach, and usually when I'm sitting on the beach, I have all the time in the world to sketch. And so these are a lot more elaborate. They have a lot more color and dimension to them. And so this was October in 2022, a beach in my former hometown where I grew up. And this is without ink. I just used watercolor and some white gel pen. And here I did use a little bit of gouache to bring out the highlights because I lost them along the way. So another thing that I started doing is bringing gouache with me because for some things, white gouache or black gouache can be a lot more useful than just watercolor alone. And so I also did some spraying texture here, just trying to use different techniques to portray natural textures. These are taken near a hospital in my hometown, and I've only used brush pens and some water-soluble pencil. And here I've only used the gray and black brush pen. So this is a very old hospital building, and this is a fountain statue in the garden in front of the hospital. Some cool sights. I'm sorry, there's a spider on my table and I keep shooing him away or her and it just won't go away. Just let me take a brush and just brush it. Okay, off you go on the floor. Okay, sorry about that. I don't mind spiders usually, but not when I'm filming. Like, I don't want them to jump right on my sketchbook. Okay, so these two are very, very quick. So these are from March 2023. So there's a bit of jump. This is January. So in the cold months, I don't sketch outside very often. So usually there's a lull in my sketchbook. And these were both very, very quick, taken 1 week apart. I think it was like a Saturday morning walk. And I was just trying to portray the atmospheric conditions. So not trying to draw a pretty drawing. And here I was just playing a bit with the rock texture and the gravel texture. But really I was most interested in the colors, which were a lot more gloomy into winter, especially here where I live. But here there's a little bit of shine because I added some metallic golden watercolor where the sun was really hitting the sea and the clouds in a way that was creating very, very bright, not so, reflections, but also it was just glowing. And so it's really hard to portray that with paint. So I just added a bit of glimmer here using metallics. This was March 2023. So while I was waiting for my partner to finish his trail race, I just found a very interesting looking house with a lot of roofs. It's not that the house itself is pretty, but just the amount of roofs they have is just wild. And so, especially seen through these branches, which is a very complex scene and a scene that I normally shy away from because it's like, wow, that would take me too much time, or I can't do all this detail just sitting on a little, like, either on the floor or like a little wall or something. But here I decided to start with the background first, so painting in the sky and just the outline of the house and the roofs, and then probably some foliage. And then I did lift some of the red in a couple of places, but you can still see it because it's a very staining color. So it's not all gone all the way through, but I did kind of manage to take away some parts which were a lot more tense to add the layer of trees on top of everything. And also also used the lifting technique on the tree trunks also to add a bit of like mossy areas, because I think that is what actually makes these trees even more interesting, is that they have some color variation on themselves. So something that I'm trying to do, or that I was trying to do during using this sketchbook, and that I will continue to do in other sketchbooks, is to add kind of more vibrant colors than I'm used to emphasize the colors that I see, because I sometimes tend to neutralize colors too much, or to be be more careful with colors and to rely on kind of the average color that I'm seeing. So, trees would be kind of a grayish brown or something like that. And here I'm trying to bring out what is the most vibrant color that I'm seeing in the scene, and then make sure to include that vibrant version of the color, not just the quote unquote natural dull down version of the color. So here there's a lot of greens and reds in this image, which normally, if you took a photo of that, it wouldn't look so vibrant, but it certainly did something. It's something that has captured my attention. So that's how I've perceived this color. Not exactly in the same way, but when you focus on something, then it becomes kind of more intense, more bright. And that's what I'm trying to do with my landscapes and these sketches, to rely more on the impression of color than the actual like photographic documentation of whatever I'm looking at. So when I added the trees, then I also painted in a little bit more of these details. But overall, I think this kind of layering technique worked out fine. Okay, I'm going to go a little bit quicker on the next ones because this was just more of a technical page that I wanted to describe. This was, again, March 2023, a scene that is normally very beautiful, but it was such a cloudy day that all the colors were very dull, very grayish. Everything was just so grayish except for that house. So it's not the most beautiful scene that I've seen in person, but I try to be kind of faithful to the atmosphere and portray the colors as I saw them then, and not in their most gorgeous edition. So this is no ink, just watercolor. This was April 2023. We're having coffee on the beach, and here I painted the background first, and then I used white gouache to paint the pine tree, and then added the kind of the leaves, or what's it called in English, the little bristles. And somewhere I had to also use gouache to go over the dark blue, so to be able to do this kind of light green. So gouache is normally best when mixed with paint. When you paint over it with watercolor, the watercolor is going to pool over it. It's not going to sink in as well as it would on paper. So it's not so great for large areas. But here on this particular motif, it worked fine. Also, this little abue here, I use the same method. Just paint the entire thing and then paint watercolor with a tiny bit of gouache just to make it more viscous. So it's, sorry, my neighbor is dragging chairs again upstairs, but she does it so often I don't know when to record my videos without that being heard on the audio. Anyway, next one, a scene at the beach. Now, not my favorite in this sketchbook, definitely. Here I used some watercolor pencil for the bark on the tree, and I used a gel pen for well, I'm kind of lost for words in English here. It's not the words that I often use, but I'm not really a fan of the foliage, and the color is too close to the forest in the background. So this tree is not standing out as much as it should have. But you know, I learned from that, and then some of my other drawings are a bit better. Now this is actually a very enlarged piece of this coast over there, and I did kind of help myself with a phone to kind of see what the details are, because my eyesight is not that amazing to be able to see like each individual tree at the like opposite coast. But I really do like the texture of the waves here, which was a happy accident. I did not know how that was going to turn out. And this is a scene near a lake. I really kind of like this composition of tree and the bicycle. And I also referenced it a bit from a photo because the bicycle moved pretty quickly. So I only had to finish the bicycle from the photo and then paint the tree as I saw it. And the structure of the tree is not great. These branches are a bit weird, but I do like the textures on it and the levels of foliage, like the background foliage, which were very washy and blurry, and then the foreground foliage, which is a lot more contrasting and detailed. These are studies of my partner while he's sitting on the beach. Now, please ignore it. I don't know what happened with this shoulder here. And, you know, that's that. I don't draw people often in these little sketchbooks because normally people do not stand still for long enough for me to paint them in any level of detail. But I did try to take an opportunity. I keep kind of tilting it because ink takes glare from this fluorescent or LED light right on the top. But when I'm using watercolor alone, I think this is just watercolor, then it doesn't have any glare. Now this is a scene near a lake, Rastoke, and generally it was a very gorgeous scene, but in a painting it doesn't translate that way because it's all green, and it really is all green. But I should have kind of emphasized different shades like bluish green to yellowish green just to bring a bit more variety. Maybe introduce some really dark blues, even where they are not actually present, just to get a bit more contrast, you know, something like here, maybe here, because you know, when there's so much green, it's just not a very interesting scene as a painting. Like it works while you're there, it's beautiful, but as a painting, it just doesn't look right. So this is something that I'm kind of having to learn. Like, okay, would this actually work as a painting, or do I have to kind of emphasize or invent some colors just to make it a more interesting painting when you don't see what the original was? So this was a little dog of a family that was lounging by the lake shore next to us. And this is a very quick drawing on the beach. This is July. This is also July. So we're in the summer season where most of the sketches have happened. And this is fountain pen with water-soluble ink and a brush pen. And this is my go-to very, very quick very minimalist sketching kit. I've been using that since this summer. It's not something that I usually do often, but I really like this particular ink because of the shade that it has. It's kind of a bluish, a greenish, like turquoise blue, not a pure blue. So I think it works for the kind of subject matter that I'm drawing most of the time. And it's very easy. So this drawing was 10 minutes or something. And most of these are very, very quick, a lot faster than watercolor. So this is another one. Oh, this is August. Okay. So we had almost a month skipping. So this is also using water-soluble ink and brush pen. And this one also took maybe 10 to 15 minutes. So it has a little bit more layers to it because you have to wait until each layer dries until you go with the next one. But you know, it was really, really quick. And this lady with a phone didn't move much while I was drawing. So that was very helpful to include figures. It's something that I don't do very often because people move too much. So my beach scenes they look like deserted beaches, which they're not. Like they're full of people, honestly. But I just don't draw people because they move around all the time, and I don't know how to do that. This is a scene that I actually saw and then took a photo of and then painted the next day because it was dark. It was too dark to actually work in from life, and the light is changing very fast in this time of day. But I was trying to work out how to portray this sunset colors with only a couple of paints. So I used transparent orange or pyrrole orange, which is, for me, the most gorgeous sunset color. It's beautiful because it doesn't mix greens with blues. It mixes kind of purplish tones with blues. So it's much better than using yellows or something a more cooler variety. And then I used probably indanthrone blue and maybe a little bit of phthalo blue, but probably a little bit of phthalo blue at the top here where the brightest blue is, and then indanthrone blue and a mix of indanthrone blue and transparent orange to kind of get these very dark tones. And I'm not sure if I used anything else, maybe some purple, but I was trying to go for a very, very limited palette just to see how much I can achieve with 2 or 3 colors at most. And this worked out really well. I don't know how much these colors are going to translate on video, but this is very vibrant in person. I hope you're gonna be able to appreciate that. So more beach scenes. These are very quick ones, just focusing on some trying to portray natural textures with ink. This is fountain pen and some brush pen, and this is mostly brush pen. Just using marks and hatching and cross hatching to try to portray grasses and earth and waves and what have you. I don't think I'm there yet, but I'm working on it. And this is just watercolor without any ink. And it's a very kind of controlled scene, but you'll see a couple of pages later this very similar scene in quite a different style. So this was someone's tent, a lot of interesting colors there, but it was mostly interesting in this tree and just how it connects to the surrounding landscape. And this is also a beach scene that has a couple of different planes. So there's this over at the other side of the cove, and then there we have a couple of layers of foliage. And so here I think I'm doing what I mentioned I wasn't doing very well in the earlier drawing. Here I was kind of trying to get a hang of it and add a lot more contrast. Now the sun was very high, so there was actually a lot of contrast in shadows, but I went like very, very intensely with it just to make sure that everything is kind of separated, that you can see different plants and different planes of perspective. And I think that turned out a lot better. So we're still in August, and we're going to be in August for a while. I'm also liking how this wet and wet is kind of flowing together in some interesting textures. And this is what I was telling you. So the same tree from over here, but portrayed very loosely with a lot of spraying. So I used spray to kind of dilute the sky and to let the foliage flow. And sometimes it works and sometimes it just makes a mess. So here it did make a bit of a mess, but I think it's fun. I don't think it worked out quite as well as I hoped, but it's fine. It was a good experiment. This one I used with just watercolor pencils. I think there were Inktense pencils and a brush pen and a water brush because I just wanted to take a very minimal kit with me without watercolor, something very lightweight because I wasn't sure that I will have time to draw. So then that's what I used. And that is September. So this was when I went to sketch with an artist friend. And we were sitting in a park and each of us chose a subject to draw there. And we were sitting on the same bench, just chatting. And so I started off with a statue that I actually painted many years ago. And I'm going to include a scan of that drawing just so you can see the difference. But I actually did well with the statue itself. But the foliage and the thing around it, I didn't really know how to work with watercolor back then, so it wasn't so pretty. And so here I was trying to kind of work on the same painting, kind of in the same style. Even if it's a little less precise, a little less defined than my earliest drawing, I think it still worked out fine. But then here I wanted to see kind of more flowing color, more wet and wet. I also used spraying here, so you can see where this green is kind of just melting into this rock here. That's where I used spray, but then I used ink on top of it to kind of define the statue, to kind of pull it in front of the background, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to add ink to this one. And so I thought, okay, I'll just do another version and I will ink that one up and I'll see which one I like better. And I still don't know which one I like better. But the point is, I didn't want to ruin this one because I was kind of liking it. So then what's the solution? Well, just do another one. And I think both of these together took me less than an hour. So probably this one took me maybe half an hour or less, and this one maybe 15 minutes. So pretty fast. I kind of managed to speed up my painting. This is late September, house on the beach. Very, very beautiful spot. And I did paint this one in an earlier sketchbook. And I'm going to include the photo of that one as well, just so you can see. I think I improved my technique a lot since then. So that was just using more defined color on the house, and then trying to use more wet and wet and spraying and just letting colors flow into each other on these less kind of on the foliage, just trying to work less at the foliage and trying to have it take care of itself. Now I did mess up here in the sky. The paper is drying really fast in the sunlight, so you can see brush marks here, which ideally I would have avoided if I was more careful. And I used some ink here just to define the foliage more. I probably should have used watercolor to do that. So instead of ink, I should have just, with a tiny pointy brush, went here. But otherwise, I really like this. And I like that it's not filling up the whole page, but it's just using this little arch as a border. And when I remember, I try to do something like that. So it's not just a full flat drawing. But I don't remember that very often. Usually I just go from edge to edge. And so this looks pretty interesting to me. Okay, so next, this was September 30th. We were traveling to a nearby island. And the first painting was actually just in watercolor. But it was really dull. I was, again, using very faithful colors, what I was actually seeing, but those colors didn't really work out as the painting. And so when I got home, I used some colored pencils to add a bit more texture and more definition, especially here in the hills and on the umbrella, on the parasol. And, wherever I was kind of lacking definition, I just added a bit more colored pencil. And I think now it looks a lot better than it did before. So this is October, and this is a little vignette in the Old Town Rab. Something that I really liked was this building on the very historic square that has a couple of these details, and like this little arch with a golden key and these little lions. I don't know all the architectural nomenclature, so sorry for sounding very dumb, but like I just really like these bits of architecture, and I added a little bit of this palm tree just as a border here, and I think that worked out well. So I used ink to outline the details because otherwise it's all the same color, so you wouldn't be able to see all the details, but I think it works pretty well. This is a ferry ride from the island, and these were just some people who were sitting in front of me, and I was able to sketch them really quickly because it's very simple, no faces, just their jackets and a bit of hair. So I was able to do that while they were sitting, but of course it took maybe 10 minutes or so. People do tend to move around on ferry rides. This was while we're still on the island, so the same day I just skipped this page because I knew the watercolor was going to run through these little gaps in the pages. And this is really one of the reasons why I'm moving to a larger sketchbook, because I noticed that I was doing a lot of these double pages, and sometimes they work fine and the colors don't bleed, but when colors bleed, then you have a big mess. So here you do have some bleed through from some adjacent pages, and I really don't want to do that anymore. I want to be working on just a single page. So I kind of grew tired of that. And overall, I don't think I'm having a lot more weight with a slightly bigger sketchbook than I do with this one, because this is still a hardcover sketchbook. It does have some heft, but the watercolor palette is the heaviest thing that I have in my sketching kit. And if I'm taking a watercolor palette, then it doesn't really matter if I have a small, tiny sketchbook or a medium-sized sketchbook. It's still not going to make such a big of a difference. So I'd rather take the bigger one. Anyway, this was a beach. This is a little silver watercolor here for this little handrail, and just the opposite coast. And here I was really just trying to play with color and texture and to keep colors more or less faithful, because they were very interesting in themselves. I didn't have to emphasize anything. There were like the reflection of the sky and then some underwater foliage that turns the sea look kind of brownish green. The only thing is here, I think I went a little bit too yellow. So this is kind of a green green color. And it could have used a little bit of green, like a true green in it. I think it's looking a bit burnt. But I do like the kind of contrast you get with these dark green and the light green. Okay, next, this is October. This is fountain pen ink, a beach scene again, and this was a cruiser ship. And so it was an enormous cruiser ship, and I wanted to make it seem how big it was. There was this little boat nearby, and I think that's kind of a cool feature. And just playing with the rock textures, basically, nothing complex. And this is the other view towards the other side. Some boats and some foliage and rock textures and just interesting colors, basically. And I don't normally enjoy drawing boats, but there was nothing else to draw on that beach. There's just rocks and boats and people, basically. I used gel pen here for this these little faint lines. So another beach scene from my former hometown. And here I was just trying to use a lot of wet and spraying. So first I spray the entire page, and then I go over it with paint, and then I spray into the paint to kind of get these different bleed through effects where the colors kind of are pushed up or down or into each other. And so very interesting for foliage, basically. And I really do like how the colors turn out. I think they are pretty faithful. And here I just added a couple of towels and a car just so you can get a sense of size. But again, I didn't include any people, which I probably would have added even more to the sense of size. But I do like kind of how this one turned out. But again, you can see, whenever you have this binding in the middle of the page, then that's gonna bleed through. That's gonna affect other pages, and even this page doesn't really look so cool with that. I mean, it's okay. It's a sketchbook. It doesn't have to look perfect, but still, I'm kind of annoyed by this. I started getting more and more annoyed by this because I'm using both pages more often than not. Okay, so this is October 7th. It's another beach scene of the beach bar. It's the same day of this one, basically. Yeah, so these are like a view on one side and a view on the other side. And if you remember, here in the beginning of the sketchbook, we had pretty much a similar scene, just a little wider view. And here, I used slightly different techniques. So I think this one turned out better. I used more wet watercolor painting, but then I used ink to kind of define things a little better, to kind of add, the outlines of the tree and the trees and the features of the beach bar and a bit of this kind of wall and gravel. So I quite like how that turned out. I think it was a bit more successful than the previous one, which means I'm improving, and that's that's great to know while I'm working that it's actually helping me. This regular practice that I'm doing, it's actually helping me improve with watercolor techniques. This was the last beach day. By beach day, I mean where I actually do take a swim in the sea. And this is on my island, but it's a different town. And I actually included people. And it was hard because there was a lot more people, of course, but it just added a couple of people more for the perspective, so you can kind of get a sense of the size of the beach. And these people should have been smaller because this is very, very much further away. But basically that was kind of just get a sense of this very wide beach and kind of the sea, the waves, but I don't have a lot of experience with that, so it's not quite so successful. This was the same beach, just viewing, straight ahead and basically just trying to note colors, just the colors of the highlights and the shadows of the hills and how the color of the sea changes based on whether it's further away or closer to the shore. I think I emphasize this green, brown a bit more. It's probably a lot more neutral, but I'm trying to get a more interesting scene. This is just a little detail of a restaurant we went to using an Inktense pencil and a brush pen and a fountain pen for the black areas. This is all November. Just a little boat in a port. Not so interesting. I think I finished this one at home because I ordered a sandwich, and so I had to finish my sandwich before we left. So I started it on location, but then I finished some details based on the photo that I took. These were really, really quick. So this one took maybe 5 minutes or less, water-soluble fountain pen. And this one too, only I added the green paint at home. So it was like, again, 5 to 10 minute drawing on location. And then I just added green because I wanted to have more separation between the trees and the foliage and the human-made parts of the drawing. This was a cafe scene. A very interesting one with lots of random objects. And I first drew it with fountain pen with water-soluble ink. And then I wasn't sure, if there was enough like separation of all the drawings. I'm going to include a photo that I took before I added colored pencils. But then at home I added colored pencils based on memory. So I didn't have a photo of this. I just did it the same day while my memory was still fresh. Added just some Color Soft and Polychromos pencils on top of everything, just to have a bit more definition and separation from different objects. And I'm still not sure whether I like this one or the previous one. So the previous one kind of looks less chaotic with all the colors. But this one is, I mean, this is what it actually looks like. The colors are just very over the top, and the decor is very over the top, but it's very cute. It's very. I think artists would appreciate this cafe because of such interesting design features. So this was this past weekend. We visited my parents, and so I drew this tree while I was on the walk. I was standing up, so I only had like a couple of minutes to draw the tree, which was very interesting. But the surroundings doesn't look as interesting. Probably could use more work, but I don't really want it. And these were some kittens my parents got a couple of months ago, and they are growing, and they are amazing and very cuddly and very beautiful. You can't tell from these drawings because kittens don't stay still for long unless they're sleeping. So I was just trying to sketch the outlines with a pencil while they were taking their poses. And then I added watercolor on top of that based on how I know how they look. And I mean, they turned out fine, but I really ought to practice more on leaving subjects such as, you know, pets or people. And I would like to do that with my next sketchbook a bit more. And the last drawing is from today. We took a bit of a hike, and this was this was a little pond made for cattle because that used to be a farmland where the hiking routes are now. And so I thought this was a very interesting scene. So we took a break for 10 minutes, and I sketched this. I try to portray, so these are the reflection in the water, and this water is in the shadow, and it's very black. And that is actually, the water was very disturbingly black in both of these little ponds. And then the surroundings just indicated like fallen leaves and trees and what have you. So again, water soluble ink. So that's good. That's a good hiking kit. Just a water soluble fountain pen, a brush pen, and a little sketchbook. I'm probably gonna have a little sketchbook for my hiking trips, and then I'm gonna have another sketchbook for watercolor, probably. And these are just some swatches, so nothing interesting, but just some colors that I've been using. And there you have it, my last tiny watercolor sketchbook for a while. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you're interested in more watercolor sketchbooks, there are videos on my playlist. So there's an older version of a very similar sketchbook, and there are some early ones that I did when I just started learning how to use watercolor. And then there are other sketchbooks that are mixed media and more of kind of my imaginative drawing. So depending on what you like, check out the playlist, and I hope you enjoy more videos. And if not, see you in the next one. Bye.